On the next exercise, we are looking at further titles for the piece. Now that we got the main one, methods for ridding yourself of debt. Now we want to find how we can break this long flow of text up into reasonable pieces with reasonable titles. So what would the title be for the first section? Looking at this carefully, this is from your exercise 5. You have to think about it, but again, you want a title that is somehow expressive of what the user wants to find out to do. In other words, you want to get information about how to do something. So I would recommend something like using the debt elimination schedule rather than just these nouns over here. Let's try that. Submit the answer. It's correct.
Here we have the same task we really had in the previous slide. But now we're going to have to find a subtitle. And we use the same principles. We simply look for the subtitle that best reflects the piece, the section that we're dealing with, that speaks to the user in the clearest way and the user can relate to and be interested in and grasp the subject matter even just by looking at the title. In some sense, titles themselves, they create a kind of a sequence that the reader can just glance at without even reading the text and understand the drift of the topic, the way things are going to, or the way things are going. Without understanding all the details, the reader can grasp kind of the overall explanation of what's going on. And this is very important for understanding any kind of technical literature. Being able to see the big picture. Just by following titles, this is often possible, as long as the titles are expressive and lead the reader from one topic or subtopic to another. Okay? The titles constitute a kind of story, if you will, and that's what we want to create here.
Okay, I don't know why he's stopping to speak. Let's check that out. 1 minute. Well, it doesn't really matter. I think I'm at that point just explaining why this would be the best. Using the debt elimination schedule is more in line with what users want to do. Okay, so you try to make the titles reflect what's in the user's mind. Again, taking that first principle into account, that we want to try to understand what's in people's mind, with the reader's mind, and to write accordingly. So I would put the title right here, using the debt elimination schedule, and that would go over all this part about what the debt elimination schedule is, how it works, etc. Okay, let's go on to the next slide now. Okay, this is the next slide, and there's the title we put in, using the debt elimination schedule. Okay, and then the question was, where should you end this first section here? If you look carefully, you'll find that one of these applies, but just exactly which one? Okay, let's look and see. It makes sense to go on. The debt elimination schedule is designed to take all your current debt information and project the possible solution to eliminate your debt. The solution generally shows significant savings in interest, okay, by following the schedule instead of merely making the same current payments. All right, I would actually end it with current payments, because the next part, look at the next part. Each of your debts is given a priority. Each month your payments are made to each debt. Once one debt is completed, okay, what are these sentences doing? They're explaining how it works. Up till now we've been discussing or explaining what debt elimination schedule is. Okay, it is designed, what it's designed for, and a little bit how it works, but not in any depth. Now all of a sudden we change tone here and begin to give almost a step-by-step overview of how it works. Okay, so at this point I would say we would end at current payments, and then we'd have another title right in here before each of your debts is given a priority. We could have a title that says something like how it works, or how the debt eliminations, something like that. Let's just put here current payments. Okay. Submit answer. Okay, it's correct. You can see.
as you see, the correct answer is now been checked and isn't you see the example on the left. This is the way it should look. This is not the only way to divide up text, and it's probably the best way under the circumstances, considering your audience, considering the topic, the subject matter, etc. Let's see what we did here and why we divided it up this way. What we've done, first of all, is just it really provided a kind of an introductory paragraph here, or section. We have something that describes what the debt elimination schedule does. It's designed to take all your current debt information, etc. What the significance of it is, or the benefits, okay? The solutions generally show significant savings and interest. This is a very typical pattern. A definition followed by a statement of benefit or major advantage that the feature gives you. Then the rest of the text, all right, really, at least for the next few sentences, is dealing with how it works, okay? And we want to try to, again, section that off, making it easy to find, easy to understand, and to comprehend, and sort of, instead of having the reader kind of wade through things to understand why it's, we've gone from the general to now the specific of how it works, we put a title here, okay? How it works, or how the debt elimination schedule works. And what I've done here then is also made the numbers here, okay? Because normally, even though we do not normally want to number anything in a description, normally we save that for instructions. But here, in this how it works section, it's so clearly the fact that we have a real sequence of steps of how the thing is actually working, okay, that it's probably better to actually number it. And by the way, when you have a sequence, you should use numbers. When you have something which is non-sequential, like a list of features, that just use bullets. Okay, very important. We'll get to this later. Do not use, do not mix them up, okay, because that can be confusing. If someone sees numbers, they immediately think this is a sequence. If it's not a sequence, then they will be confused. They may try to do 1, 2, and 3. Here, this is clearly a sequence, even though it's not user actions, but it is the actions of the system itself. Okay, now, once the reader gets through that, we'll now see what other sections are coming up. But this at least gives the reader a good basis and or an advantage of understanding what's going on. Scroll through this, you'll see that it makes a lot of sense. And then we'll now look at what we can do with the rest of the text.
Okay, from the discussion, you understand why I divided up this way, and then the last part is to sum it up. Now, again, I don't like this to sum it up. In terms of the writing, it's not that great. But the exercise was not to change the writing. It was not to change the sentence structure or to revise sentences, etc. It was to add some method of organization so that it's easy to find information and so that it's easy to understand. So don't worry about the exact wording on these things. That wasn't the exercise. All right, well, now we've got another big flow of text. What do we do with all this? Okay, now let's see the next slide, and we'll find out.
Okay, for this slide, I've just made myself invisible altogether. Let's now compare the two windows here. You'll see that the one on the left is what we had from the last slide, okay? And the one on the right is still more editing and revising. Let's scroll down to debt elimination schedule options. Okay, you see on the left, this is where we left it the last time. And now look with the right window, scroll down to the same thing, and let's see what changes we put in now. One of the changes I've done is I've eliminated where it says you may choose one of 9 predefined priorities. I said you may choose from among a list of predefined priorities. What's the big difference here? Well, in my experience of many years I've been doing technical writing, when you put a specific number down for the number of priorities or options or menus or buttons or whatever it is in the interface on the screen, you're letting yourself in for trouble. In the future, your company may want to add or take out an option or a priority or whatever, and you will probably forget to update the material somewhere else in the manual, okay? Because there may be several places where it's mentioned, and while you may put in the new priority or take out the priority, you may forget that in sentence so and so somewhere in some chapter it mentioned 9 instead of 8 or 10, and that's one reason. The second reason is there is no real good reason for putting in the number of priorities. It doesn't matter if you may choose from one of 9 9 or 18 or 55 priorities. It adds absolutely nothing to the reader's essential knowledge. It doesn't help the reader at all or the user in knowing that it's 9 or 8 priorities. It means nothing. Okay, it's just a number. So this kind of number can be eliminated. Obviously, other types of numbers, when it comes to measurements and things of that sort, need to be in there. But this has no real significance whatsoever, so it's much better and safer to just say you may choose from among a list of predefined priorities. It's fine. Now, whenever we have a list, we usually have a bulleted list. So the best thing would be to bullet the list that's going to be shown here. But I've bulleted, but notice how my list is very different from what you see on the left. On the left, it has the debts with the largest balance are paid off first, the debts with the smallest minimum payment are paid off first, and so on and so on. But in my list, it just says smallest balance, largest payment, smallest minimum payment. Now, how did that happen? Where did all the other text go? Well, when you look at the original, and you will see that the text repeats itself over and over. Wherever you see repetitive text, you can normally figure out some solution so you don't have to repeat it. This saves the reader the time of going through all that text and trying to figure out what you're trying to say. If you can just say it once in such a way that the rest of the text is very concise, then it makes it so much easier to read and understand. Okay? So here, the repetitive parts are paid off first, and also the beginning parts, the debts with. The debts with are paid off first. The debts with are paid off first in every one of those options. And the only difference is at the middle part, largest balance, smallest minimum payment. So we have to think of a way of reconstructing the sentence in order to get that, eliminate that repetition. And I did it by doing as follows. You can read the introductory sentence here. The predefined methods determine which debts are paid off first according to the following criteria. That works, right? Because that's really what's happening. According to the following criteria. Smallest payments, source for smallest balance, largest balance, smallest minimum payment, largest minimum payment, and so on. So there, I've completely cleaned up this part, made it much easier to read without really editing. Okay, very little editing. I mean, just a small change of words here. I haven't done any deep editing. That's not the purpose of this exercise. There are many things we could do with this to shape it up, make it look better, etc., make it sound better, but that's not really what we want to do here. We just want to do the minimum of organization to get it off get into a better format, and it actually goes a long way. Even with this minimum organization, we've got a fairly decent piece to read as opposed to the original, which is just pretty horrendous. Okay, so that's where we've gotten so far, and then we'll go on and see what we can do with the rest of the piece.
Now we've got to figure out what to do with all this, okay? Look at this thing. It says, in many cases, the priority payment payoff option you choose will simply be a matter of preference. However, certain options offer either real or psychological advantages. And it's going on, seems to be talking about the relative advantages of the different options that you can choose from. So, what kind of title would you put before that? Well, I would put this one. Which option should you choose? Addressing the reader directly and asking a question that's probably in his mind. The reader's thinking along those lines. Gee, I wonder which is the best. Because you're giving me all these different scenarios. This might be good for this, and this might be good for that. So that's exactly it. Okay?
Okay, here we are. I'm back again. As you can see, the talking head at the bottom. And that's just great. Now, what I want to discuss now is really the end of this particular exercise. We now want to deal with the rest of the text, and let's see what we can do with it. You selected one of the titles, and the correct title is which option should you choose? Okay? For the very next section, as you see, this particular section deals with the different options that are available to you and giving you comparisons of which ones are better for different kinds of situations, the psychological advantages, the real advantages, etc. goes through the different options that you have. So it makes sense to siphon that off, divide it off, and put a title above it. Which option should you choose? Notice that this is a question. It's a question to the reader, and it again is trying to second guess what the reader has in his head. One of the most important principles of any kind of writing, but especially technical writing, is try to be sensitive to readers' expectations. What do readers expect? And what they expect is they expect to have their questions answered. What do you think the reader might be thinking about while he's reading, or he or she was reading your work? What questions do they have in mind? What images are being formed in their brain as they're reading? That's really the secret, by the way, to all writing. To all writing, whether it's creative writing, technical writing, essay writing, it doesn't matter what. It's always trying to figure out what is the reader thinking now, and are you sensitive to that? And can you supply the reader with he's an answer to what he's thinking, or some kind of response to what you think is going through the reader's mind? And that's what makes really great writing. Okay, some people are better at it than others. It does take practice. If you practice at it, you will get better, no matter where you start. And it doesn't matter, if you have particular talents or not. Everyone can learn this, especially in technical writing. Obviously, writing a novel, it will be a little bit difficult, more difficult, because you really have to imagine what the reader is thinking when they're reading about your characters, and try to figure out where to go next in writing. Okay, the next, I've actually finished off the piece here, as you can see. We have the loan consolidation schedule would be the next title. That's a logical title to have, because that now is the second major title in the piece. The first one was on the debt elimination schedule, which was one method, and now we're going to the second method, the loan consolidation schedule method. And that should be in the same size, right? The same size title as the debt elimination schedule title. And because we want to show symmetry, we want to show consistency between our major titles. They should all be the same size, and that will help our hierarchy, as we said before, to show the hierarchy of the piece and the parts of the piece. Under that, the next title down is how it works. Again, we have how it works, and it's symmetrical to the first part. Okay? We have how the debt elimination schedule works. Now we're having how the loan consolidation schedule works. And finally, we end up with loan consolidation options. Again, similar to what we had earlier with the other method. And then we have something else which wasn't in the other method, something about entering information. Here's using this debt entry window. I wasn't sure where to put it. Put it last here. Obviously, we don't have much information here. We need more information to complete that last part. Maybe there's more things to say, or maybe this whole thing about entering debt information should be underneath another title about how to work with the system. But obviously, we are out of information now. The piece has ended, and if we needed more information to continue, we have to go and gather it from developers or from some other sources. So that's basically the way you attack this piece. The most important thing to remember is simply to be aware of what readers may be thinking, and to try to title all the different parts of your piece with interesting titles, expressive titles, with titles that lead the reader through the piece, okay? And that make things much more comprehensible, right? Just by glancing at the title, you can sort of comprehend what's going on. And of course, they act as signposts so that you can find things, that's for sure. The reader skips the piece and can find things much easier this way. And that's it, really.
Okay, this next part is on exercise 6. The correct style for technical documentation involves these four elements: being terse or short, user-friendly, detailed, and complete. These are just examples of the various things here, and actually you have the same thing in your lecture 1. This is another example. I put here, notice that statements start with a verb, log on to this, back up. They don't always have to. There are exceptions to that rule, as we'll learn. You have user-friendly. The title with a question mark, and then explains what to do or what it's all about. Planning your installation. The use of the word "you," or for example, kind of pulls the reader in and makes things easier to understand. Detailed. This is an example of detail. Making sure that you mention everything that needs to be known to perform the action. For example, even though here's the concrete verb, select programs, but they don't start with it. Why not? Because you need to know from where do you select the option program. So you say from the start menu. Okay? In other words, you preface this with the location of the option. So locations of things, where things can be found, under which menu or in which dialog box, all that is very important. Okay? And completeness. Here the idea is that you have to make sure that you also provide the responses of the computer or the software. In other words, when you enter this, the command returns information like the following. It tells you what happens after that. And when you do this, you get something else, and etc., etc. In other words, enabling the reader to follow what's going on by seeing the responses of the machine or the software or the computer or whatever. Okay. What are the good and bad things about that particular manual that was used for exercise 6?
We're going to be going over the bad points of this manual, even though in the last slide we showed all the good things. But the fact is that there are a lot of problems with this manual as well. So those of you who gave critical remarks and said what's not right about the manual were just as right as those who were saying that there are a lot of good things. On the one hand, it does seem to conform to the idea of user-friendly, detailed, accurate, complete, that type of thing. But then there's all these other problems that it has. Let's look at some of them. I haven't recorded all of them, just recorded some of them. Look at the one here. If you click on bad formatting, you will just get a screenshot, kind of compressed because of the slide, but a screenshot of an example of a page where there's just too much text. It's too crowded. And on top of all that, there are hardly any divisions. There's a lot of underlining and that type of thing, all things that are not really conducive to a nice user experience when someone is reading something like this. Technical things are hard enough, but when you have to read them in large quantities like this, where there's no divisions and where everything just kind of looks like a sea of words all crowded together, it's a very bad idea. So that's one big problem, and it's throughout the manual. That's just one page out of many that are like that. And so, if I would just quickly glance at the manual, I'd say, well, this manual could really be improved. Another thing is what I call putting the cart before the horse, and you can get a better idea of that by clicking on the link here, and you'll see an example. There's a little explanation, and then the explanation says something. The primary host can use one of the following databases for registration or authentication, puts a colon, and you expect it now to see one of the following databases, and then suddenly the author or this guy who's writing this thinks, maybe you don't know what registration or authentication is, so he puts it in parentheses, hey, registration is the process by which so-and-so authentic. This just breaks up the entire flow of the reader's experience. Suddenly, he has to backtrack now, and it's as if the writer is saying, oh yeah, I just remembered, hey, maybe you don't know what I'm talking about, so I'll just stick this little note in here before I go on. Now this kind of pause in the flow of information is not very good. Okay, it's not a very good idea. It breaks up the reader's thought. The reader now has to suddenly learn some new things, what's registration and what's authentication, and then go back to the main idea again and try to remember what the paragraph was talking about in the first place, which was something to do with the primary host. It's just a very bad flow of information. The author should have before, if you thought that the reader doesn't know what registration authentication is, and you should have explained it a little bit before, and then got into it, okay? And that would have been the proper way of doing it. It's all shoved together. And this is just one example of many places that are like this throughout the manual, so that's another major problem. And there are other problems where the text seems too wordy in some places, goes on and on, where it could be shortened up. There are places where, in other words, a violation of the first principle of being terse, concise. There are places where it assumes too much. In other words, it uses technical terms and then just refers you to some manual for who knows where for further information if you don't happen to know what the writer is talking about. This too may send the reader all over the place looking for information, and becomes very difficult it makes the manual very difficult to read, because you have to kind of scatter around to find the information that you need to understand what you're reading. So for all these reasons, this is not what I would call a great manual by any means. However, it's one of these middling type of manuals where you can see some good things about it, certainly some representative things that show you how manuals should look. I mean, there's certain things that are good there, and plenty of things that need improvement. So this is pretty much what you're going to find out in the real world, and of course it'll be up to you to change it and make it better.